In recovery, the stories that we tell ourselves are incredibly powerful. They can actually be powerful in a negative way and lead us down a road of self-deception and bitterness and resentment that really is based upon a story that we have been telling ourselves for a variety of reasons that I'll cover in a few minutes. If you're a betrayed spouse, it's just as easy to fall prey. In fact, due to the betrayal and due to the trauma that you have had to embrace and process through, it's even easier for you to fall prey to telling yourself a story about what's been going on that just isn't true. A week or so ago, I talked to you about one of the biggest wounds and one of the biggest struggles that I really believe caused both myself and, unfortunately, thousands and thousands of other people to have affairs, and that is a lack of self-acceptance. In fact, a struggle with self-hatred or self-rejection, which causes us to look for affirmation and acceptance outside of ourselves. But this topic today, which I've called the stories that we tell ourselves, is equally powerful to destroy us if we're not careful. You see, in recovery, there comes a point where you absolutely have to dismantle some of the stories that you have been telling yourself to empower the affair or the addiction or the dysfunction that you're a part of. And I'll give you an example. As an unfaithful spouse, I was telling myself a story that during my affair, it justified and empowered my affair. One of the stories that I told myself was, it's never going to be enough for Samantha. She's just never going to be happy with me. So, you know what? I'm going to give up hopes of getting my needs met or feeling, what I feel everywhere else, but at home I'm going to kind of just give that up and realize that that's just the way it's going to be, and I'll get my needs met elsewhere. Now, that was a story that I kept telling myself. I believed it, and at some level I kept telling myself that story because it empowered the affair and it minimized the pain that I felt or the rejection and anger I had at myself for doing what I was doing. So it alleviated some of the shame and the guilt that I was feeling. Now, I will tell you that throughout some difficult times in our marriage, both early on in recovery and maybe even years down the road, Samantha has had to uncover and dismantle some stories that she had been telling herself. And in all fairness, I shared one from mine. I'll share another one from her situation. Is that one of the stories that she told herself was, you know what? All you want to do is be physically intimate. That's all you care about. As long as you get your needs met, you're happy. And that just wasn't true. But it was a story that she kept telling herself that would kind of justify some deep-seated bitterness or some deep-seated resentment or rejection that she was wrestling with. So as long as she kept telling herself that story, it empowered the anger and the bitterness and the resentment that she was feeling towards me. You see, it's oftentimes that we will tell ourselves a story to justify what we're feeling, and then we get caught, right? Then we get sucked into this self-fulfilling prophecy almost, and we get sucked into this belief system which causes us to get stuck in bitterness and resentment because we keep telling ourselves this story to make us feel better or to make ourselves feel like we're right. I know that she's never going to be happy with me. I know if I just made more money, that would probably solve all her problems, but I'm never going to make enough money, so we're just going to have to make do with what we have. We continue down this road of telling ourselves a story to justify the bitterness or the confliction that we're conflicted inside. And so as long as we keep telling ourselves that story, we feel like we're right and we don't have to change. The way that I learned this lesson is I was in a meeting with Rick and Samantha one day, and I had said something that I hadn't really planned to say, and it just kind of came out. And Rick looked at me really oddly. Samantha was furious and really launched out into anger. And Rick stopped her and said, Samuel, let let me help you for a minute here. You're you're telling yourself a story that isn't really true." And he said, "So hold on a second here." And he looked at Samantha and he said, "Samantha, do you feel X about Samuel? Do you feel that?" And Samantha went into this good few minute, now it was emotional and it was very charged, but it was passionate in an attempt to rectify the ignorance that I had believed. It was passionate in an attempt to help me understand that I was believing a story that I had been telling myself for a long time, which was justifying the bitterness and the angst that I was feeling internally, when in reality she did not feel that way at all. Now, I sat there feeling like an idiot, but yet I was still stuck trying to believe that she was telling me the truth and not just telling me what I wanted to hear. And so I was really caught in this dark, difficult moment of whether or not I was going to believe what she was telling me, or I was going to hold on to the story that I was telling myself to justify the bitterness and the anger that I was feeling towards Samantha in the first place. Do you see how that cycle works? It's incredibly dysfunctional, but it's incredibly powerful in keeping us stuck in our bitterness, resentment, or just plain stuck in the lies that we have believed about our spouse. Now, that moment was incredibly powerful for both of us because it caused Samantha to see the story that I had been telling myself, and it caused her to have compassion towards the lies I was believing that were rooted in self-hatred, self-rejection, etc., etc. We did the same thing with Samantha at another time, and it caused me to have compassion for how she was seeing herself based upon a lie that she, or a story that she was telling herself, and it caused me to go, whoa, that's so far from the truth. You see, if we can uncover the stories that we are telling ourselves that are not true about our spouse, we can find an incredible amount of breakthrough in healing. But it takes a few things. It takes, number one, the situation that you are in has to be somewhat calm, because if you can't have conversations without them exploding and flooding and animosity and anger and attack, verbal attack, you're going to find yourself very frustrated, and I don't advise doing it. But if you have gained some significant momentum and you feel like you can have some amicable discussions, then I would challenge you to talk with your spouse and say, look, let's write out some stories that you feel you may be believing about how your spouse sees you. Let's write out the stories that we are telling ourselves, and then let's compare notes and talk about it. When Samantha and I did that, it really helped because it caused me to be very vulnerable and say, I have felt like you feel this about me. And 99% of the time she was able to say, no, what I really feel is this. However, what I struggle with is this. So it was kind of a vetting out process. She did that with me, and I was able to go, whoa, I don't feel that at all. I mean, I do feel this, but that is nowhere near what you're feeling, and I want to be able to help you heal. See, that's how, or as an example of how we can help each other heal. Now, you have to be a little bit further down the road. You have to be able to have some very amicable communication going on between you two, but I promise you, if you do it right, it'll absolutely transform your recovery and your relationship.